Hello and welcome to Skeptic Haven. I am your host, RIon. Today on this episode of Women's Atheist Unload, we're going to discuss Christian cults and their pervasiveness in our country. Stay tuned. You will not want to miss out.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that.
Hello, Stacy.
Hi.
It looks like today we're going to peel back some layers of Christian cults in our society. Doesn't that sound relaxing?
So relaxing. It's like a day at the spa.
A day at the spa. I'm so glad that I get to host with you. This is going to be a very interesting topic. Yeah. And I like the fact that it's us ladies discussing it. That's going to be extra fun. Would you like to get the ball rolling with our introductions?
Sure. So I'm really excited. Janice Selbie is here with us to talk about Christian cults. So hi, Janice. Hi. I'd like to give a quick intro about who Janice is. She's a friend of mine. And Janice is a registered professional counselor and a religious recovery consultant located in the unceded territory of the Syilx people in Kelowna, BC. She deconverted from evangelical Christianity after nearly 4 decades and now has a private practice devoted to helping former believers recover from religious trauma syndrome, which is amazing. In addition to her work as a counselor and consultant, Janice is the founder and host of COURT, the Conference on Religious Trauma. And she also hosts the Divorcing Religion podcast. In her spare time, Janice is the vice president of CASHA, stands for Kelowna Atheist, Skeptic, and Humanist Association. So sounds like you have not very much to do ever. So thank you for being here.
I'm tired just listening to that.
I know, but
we only have an hour.
I know, but everyone, I really highly recommend, please subscribe to her YouTube channel, which is Divorcing Religion podcast.
Oh, it's the Conference on Religious Trauma.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Okay, thank you for correcting me. The Conference on Religious Trauma. Yes, you have some really amazing guests on your show and the stories that you share. So, yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I can't wait to dig into your content. I'm going to make sure I do that and start doing a binge. I'm going to do a binge later on today.
All right. Mm-hmm. You can be my fan.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Really, we appreciate it. So I will introduce our next guest, Dr. Time Waster. Hello there. She is a former member of the Jehovah's Witnesses who, despite her upbringing, has still become a doctor, got an education, but just so happens to waste her time on the internet. And we love it. We love
That's true. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You've got some inside information leaving a high control group. So
yes, for just a bit of background, I was 4th generational raised Jehovah's Witness. So it's something that's been very deeply ingrained in my own personal family history. And many of my family are either still in the religion or were in the religion. So it's a big part of my personal life. So this is where my interest lies, of course.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your opinions. We'll love to look forward to hearing them. Also with us today is Lindsay.
Hey.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. And you are an RN, correct?
Yes.
All right. With a passion for videos pertaining to all things separation of church and state. I don't know if you've ever caught me like going through and liking a lot of your videos. Don't notice, but sometimes I do that because you truly teach me a lot. There's so many things I'm just opening up to when it comes to litigious things with Christianity being involved and our government. I really appreciate your content.
Oh, thank you. That means so much. Thank you. Yeah, it is so interesting how they interweave and how often different Christian groups are constantly pushing for legislation that incorporates their beliefs into our government, and just how that overlaps into everything.
Yeah, it's becoming super intertwined into our government when I thought it was supposed to be a complete separation, but that is not. It's getting chaotic. I don't know if you all feel that same way, but I feel as though it's starting to reach like a fever pitch. Not sure if that's the best explanation or definition of it. I don't know how you all are keeping yourselves afloat and keeping on top of things, but how do you feel about that? Do you feel like it's gotten worse?
I might not be the best gauge for that because I'm in Idaho. I'm deep in the redoubt, deep into where they really are trying to push for Christian nationalism. So it feels like it's happening every day at a fever pitch. We're just constantly trying to catch things and stop them. So I don't know if I'm the best gauge for that because it does feel like that, but it's felt like that for a little while. So I don't know. What is it like everywhere else?
I don't think it's too terrible in PA. I think we've kind of been able to fight back because we had I think it was Mastriano, who's definitely a Christian nationalist, even possibly a KKK member, but he did not make it, thank goodness. But that doesn't mean that we're in the clear. There's still plenty of areas that have Trump signs and whatnot.
Well, if I can just step in, Stacy and I are both in Canada, in British Columbia, and watching very closely the things that are going on in your country, because being next to the United States, you guys sneeze and we catch cold. Whatever goes on there is likely to show up here, and we do see it showing up here on a smaller scale, and it's very concerning.
Yeah, it definitely showed up, especially since the pandemic. And I'd say last year we had our own, like with the trucker rally. I think that's when it really came to a head.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That was
they hijacked it. They hijacked our flag. And now every time I see 100%. Cars driving down the road with all these Canadian flags on them, I get so mad.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So
that makes it difficult to discern who's who. Like sometimes I see an American flag, I'm like, is that normal? I don't know what to expect.
Kind of how we feel now. It kind of gives me like these uneasy feelings. Whereas before I felt proud.
I was gonna say if I see it now, it's just an impulse. I'm like, ooh, they're problematic. It's probably not. It's not good, but that's my instant like American flag shirt, American flag, anything on your car. I'm like, ooh, just walk quickly, kids. Let's go.
Yep. Pretty much.
Yeah. I do feel, I don't know if it's wrong or right. You guys obviously chime in and tell me that since 2016, and again, I'm still kind of newly coming out of the cult. So I don't know how well I'm founded in some of these ideas of my own, but that to me seems like when things started to kick up a notch, and we've got like groups like QAnon and whatnot who put out propaganda. And I think that to me is one of the scariest things because it's so hard to fight.
Yeah.
I got a huge boom in my clients after 2016 because so many of them grew up in very conservative religious homes, and they were very upset with what the former president was talking about and how he was claiming to be a Christian. And they were so upset that they left en masse. We say they emptied the pews, but then they find themselves outside and thinking, well, who am I now if I don't belong to that group anymore?
Right. It's their identity. Or was their identity. And I think that's probably the struggle with many groups is it's how you identify. So anytime there's a constructive criticism about their belief, like, hey, you can have your belief, but how about not put it into our government? Oh, you're a murderer. You just want kids to like.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's not where I was going with that, friend.
And I think I absolutely agree with you. I think in 2016 that started to really pick up. And then in 2020 with the pandemic, using QAnon and then just the complete distrust of very fundamental institutions in our society, hospitals, doctors, scientists, just these groups that are usually viewed as benign, or you trust them somewhat, or people have a generally positive view of them. Just the ultimate distrust. I think in a lot of ways that fractured our ability to have rational conversations, because there has to be a level of trust in certain institutions to be able to have discussions. And once you've lost that trust, your ability to have discussions or to try to find common ground just instantly decreases. And I think we've been really suffering from that ever since.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's such a great point. All the lines have been blurred. There's no hard stops at, at the government, at the school board. Like everything is just becoming this battle. Yeah, this battle against Christian nationalism.
Yeah, absolutely.
This
it's the fusion. When ideology and identity become fused, then people start to get really uptight if you are questioning their ideology, because they take it on a deeply personal level, because it is their identity. So then it's not just that you have something negative to say about Christianity or QAnon or whatever their belief system is, but they take it as you saying something negative against them and who they are. Right. Very problematic.
Do you find that a lot of... Oh, sorry, Ryan.
No, please.
No, I was just going to say, do you find like a lot of people who believe QAnon ideologies have never heard of QAnon? Because that's what I found. I found a lot of my friends, they don't even know they're following QAnon. Like they're following it, but they don't know that that's what they're following.
Sure, because they might have come into it through the wellness, sector or whatever, something that has nothing to do with anything else. They're just like a granola mom or a crunchy mom or however you want to call it. And so they hear this and it sounds right, and people who pass it on sound really certain. But that doesn't mean it's actually true. But then if they have their bubble and everybody else is echoing those same things, it's pretty hard for people to find their way out a lot of times.
Yeah. Dr. Time Waster, you seem to be, you probably have a lot of knowledge in this area.
I'm struggling to find words to kind of describe what I agree with a lot of what your observations are and the things that you guys have seen. I have seen a surprising amount of similarities to once learning kind of more about what cults are. And just, it's like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And, yes, there's a lot of people who are getting taken in by a lot of different ideas, and kind of, again, going back to like what a cult is, definitions matter.
Yeah.
And in a world where people can just change the definition to suit whatever they want in that moment, it's a really slippery slope of carving yourself out of every definition of anything that's negative. So I can redefine what the word cult means and carve my situation out of that. And I don't know if that's cognitive bias or what terminology that is, but I see that happening in a lot of different groups. And, like me personally, when I kind of realized, like, I think I might be in a cult, the first thing that I started asking myself was, how can I identify this? Like, how can I ask myself and be honest with myself? Like, am I being unreasonable in my own belief system? Am I carving myself out of this kind of stuff? And once I sort of opened that door of just making it okay to think about that, I started realizing things that aren't even religious can be cults. And that didn't even occur to me at all. So the idea that a MAGA party could be a cult or QAnon could be a cult, wellness and homeopathy and like you just it's just
multi-level marketing,
Herbalife and
ding ding ding.
So like then it just, once you kind of get more information about how it's working, you just see where it could be and where it can fit in. And I think, yeah, I see QAnon, I see Trump supporters that are fitting this definition. And then I think about healthcare. I also work in the healthcare industry. You could kind of apply some of this to that as well. But when I start really breaking it down and thinking about how do I know if I'm in a cult, there's barriers in place in a lot of the healthcare system where they put stopgaps. They don't want it to be that way. There's legal enforcements, there's rules, there's things that kind of are set up so you're not being financially taken advantage of, and you're not being you can only have this job. And we're going to blackmail you because you'll never be able to work anywhere else. Like there's certain things in place that prevent it from becoming that. And once I kind of realized the difference, it was very helpful for me to kind of recognize it a little bit better too.
I feel like this is a great place to talk about the BITE model. I don't know if you're familiar with the BITE model, Steve Hassens. And so it's just a way that we can kind of determine if something is a little bit culty. So BITE stands for behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions. And if a person or group is trying to control your behavior, your information, your thoughts, or your emotions, that is a huge red flag right there. Of course, the problem being when we are in a high demand or coercive control group, we are wearing rose-colored glasses, in which case a red flag only shows up as a normal colored flag. So that's why it's important to take a look at things like Steve Hassens' BITE model and go through it and see, okay, what about this group? Why does this feel so familiar? And start to find your way out through that.
And I think that brings up a good question. I'd love to hear you what you all think about it. But in terms of, like, I don't know if you want to call it coded language, but certain words just seem to inflame people. Like if you would have said the word cult to me 20 years ago, I would have just been like, wall up, bye bitch.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't see ya, So how are we supposed to be able to, is it our job? I don't know, to get through to people when, if we say certain words, they're immediately going to feel on the defense. If we say mind control or thought control, or how do we get around those barriers? Is there a way? This might be futile. I don't know. A question in futility, it might be. I don't know.
Do you mean, is there a way to communicate with people who are inside of those groups?
Right. Without using words that
will get an emotional response that will get them angry. Is that what you're
right? But still
like put up
yes, defense.
Right. I think.
Oh, go ahead, Janice. Oh, I was gonna say,
I've said enough. You go.
I'm not good at this. When I initially left Mormonism, I did it with a bang and it was not good. I was the exact example of how to not do this well. I can tend to be a little bit of a wrecking ball sometimes. And so when I realized like I was in a cult, I was going to save everyone, get my whole family out. We were all going to be out. That was not the way. But what I tried to do is instead, if I just started saying like, look at this problem with your church or look at this problem with your belief system, that's a non-starter. They're not interested in having that discussion. But I would talk about things like other groups. So like we would talk about Jehovah's Witnesses because Mormons are like, Jehovah's Witnesses are weird, which is so funny.
Right. We thought you guys were weird too, by the way.
I know. So we're just like culty cousins, but we can be. So I would point out, something would hit the news and I'd be like, wasn't that crazy? And they'd be like, yeah, how can they believe that? And I'd be like, well, we talk about something like cognitive dissonance. And so I talked to a family member and be like, well, have you heard of cognitive dissonance? And we talk about what that was. They had no idea what that was, or confirmation bias, or all these different things. And just kind of like dropping those little like they can't see it with their group. They can't, you can't. That's what I found. You just, when you're in it, until you're ready to see it, or until something just clicks for you, you're not going to see it. And just hammering at it is not the way. But pointing it out in other groups and then bringing up the fallacies that are going on, my hope is always at some point they'll look back on that and say, well, the J-Dubs did that, but like also we do that. Wait a second, something like that.
That's really good advice.
And
I love that.
I mean, it hasn't worked yet. All my family's still Mormon, but
no. Can I say something though, just as an experience for me? One of the, like, there was a few things that kind of set the ball rolling, like a domino effect, where I was starting to wake up and question like my upbringing. But one of the things that started it was watching, Scientology. What's her name? Leah Remini.
Leah Remini, yeah.
Watching Leah Remini. And yes, and I would watch and I'd go, that's interesting. Well, we don't do that, but we do this, which is, so I was kind of doing that comparison thing, but still going, no, we're not a cult. You can leave. I think you can leave. And then I started to realize, like, wait a minute. You really can't leave. Like, maybe they don't come after you and harass you like they do an oppressive person in or suppressive person in Scientology. You just get the opposite. You don't exist.
Yeah.
Your existence is erased off of this planet. So while not everything lined up, it was starting. So I like that. I'm going to have to think about that. That was a really good piece of advice.
And dispensing of existence is something that cults do, just like what you were talking about. When they, it's like they erase you if you go outside the group, if you no longer believe. That is definitely a culty thing, and I love Lindsay's idea too.
Yeah, because if that's your identity, that's who you identify as, and if everything you've ever known says you're not one of us, and not only that, we don't want to associate with you, you really are losing your life. So it's a very scary, it's a scary thing you don't just take willy-nilly. Stacy, did you have an audio file?
Yeah, I actually have a little audio clip because I know a lot of people, like I know from myself, I wasn't raised Jehovah's Witness, I wasn't raised Mormon, I was raised Christian, and I know we were always like, oh yeah, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, they're Christian, or they're in cults. We're not in a cult, right? It's kind of like that Spider-Man meme where all the Spider-Mans are pointing at each other. Right?
Yes.
And so it was obvious that you guys were in cults, but we weren't. So I actually have a little audio clip from the church that we just left, and I would like Wes to play it because I think Christians are in cults more than they realize. So if you could just play that, Wes.
No, once you're part of this local church and you're committed, that doesn't mean you can't leave. It's not a cult. You can leave. Again, we can look at the analogy of a family. You can look at the family relationship generally, and you can look at the marriage relationship specifically. In a healthy relationship, you're committed. And there are good ways to leave, but there are bad ways as well.
So he's saying, you can leave. We're not a cult. You can leave. And I think he's kind of covering his bases by saying, oh no, it's fine. You can go. But he goes on to say a good way to leave is if you get married and your spouse goes to another church of the same denomination. That's okay to leave this building. Or if you move to a different city, it's okay to go to another building. But you can't leave the denomination, because when we left the denomination, they still excommunicated us. So really, you can't leave without them making a huge deal about it and a fuss. So I think too often people don't associate Christianity as being cult-like in behavior. So I just wanted to see what, maybe Janice, what you think about something like that. Because
I find Christianity to be absolutely cult-like. It is very culty. So this is not me saying It's a cult. It's a cult.
Yeah.
And there are definite elements of Christianity, and there are shared elements in different high demand coercive control groups, like authoritarian control, extremist beliefs, isolation from society, and veneration of individuals. And we can see that in pretty much all of the different cults that exist. And some people don't even like the word cult. They call it a new religious movement. But I mean, really, a cult is any religion but your own. That's how we think of it.
Exactly.
I was taught the Catholics were a Catholicism was a cult, and JW was a cult, and Mormons were a cult. But no, not the Pentecostals. Now I'm like, holy shit.
Right. Once you start getting into their beliefs, then you're like, oh, okay, you really kind of are trapped in this system. And that to me is like a big signifier. Like, can I escape this? And if you can't just like turn the knob and walk out the door, that's a cult, in my opinion.
And people always want to know, what can we do as people who've managed to break free? How can we help people who remain entrenched? And just as Lindsay said, people aren't ready until they're ready. And so the best thing we can do, as long as we can maintain our mental health, is to keep that door of communication open, to be as non-judgmental and non-critical in our conversations with these people. We're not going to be saying, it's stupid. How can you even believe that? That just turns people off right there, and they shut down. So instead, asking them questions. What made you decide that this was the group for you? And even pointing to times before they were in the cult, if there was a time before. Remember when we all went to the cabin up at Uncle Joe's place, and remember how great that was? Just reminding them that there was a life before the cult if they joined in adulthood. If they were raised in it, you don't even have that option, but just letting them know that they can come to you anytime and talk to you about what's going on with them. That can be a big help for people who want to leave and they don't know where to go.
Right. I do think size, well, maybe I should word it this way. Does size matter?
Yeah.
But when it comes to a cult, right? I think that we have in our head, we kind of think these small groups, this charismatic leader, maybe 50 people, I don't know, but we seem to think like Jim Jones, a few hundred people. But when you scale that up to like a Jehovah's Witness, you're like, that can't be a cult. It's too big.
Well, that's what I was going to say too, because I feel like not all cults right now have a charismatic leader necessarily. Like, they don't all seem to have what?
They aren't cute. They aren't charismatic. They're not smart. No, you're right. I agree.
There's not a specific like legal definition of what a cult is. Typically, it's a social group defined by unusual religious or spiritual or philosophical beliefs and rituals. That's what I had to write down here. And so that's kind of the loose framework that people have. And people do tend to say, if it's so big, it's too big. It can't be a cult. But I cry bullshit on that for exactly what you're saying. Look at how huge the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Unification Church, thousands and thousands of people, formerly called the Moonies. So right. I don't really think size factors in too much.
No, I don't. I think that just in many ways makes it more insidious, because it makes you think that there's no harm in that group because it's so large. And how could that many people be fooled? How could that be? Well, because people are vulnerable. But you know what? I think that could lead to like a next question. Why do we think that people join cults? What's happening?
Because everyone is vulnerable at some time, and it's typically a transition point in our life. There's been a life change. Either we're away from our family for the first time, going to college or university, or we've lost a spouse, we've lost a job, we've lost a child. We are struggling somehow, we're marginalized on the outskirts of society. So those are big ways. Also, of course, being born into it. When you're indoctrinated from birth, as I was, it just all makes sense because everybody that I knew and fellowshipped with, they all believe the same thing. So I wasn't hearing dissenting voices, and I had no interest in questioning.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to know. I didn't want to start tugging on that thread and have it all unravel.
Yeah. I would say, I know specifically within Mormonism, I mean, missionary work is a huge thing for them, just like with Jehovah's Witnesses. And they specifically teach, like, at funerals, invite your friends who aren't Mormon, invite people who are less active. And then there is guidance that funerals are not supposed to be about the person who died. Like, have a little like eulogy for a second. It is about preaching Mormonism to them and what they call the plan of salvation, or like this idea that you have to be Mormon to be with your family. So see, isn't this really sad that Uncle Joey died? And if you were Mormon, you could see him again, but you're not. So oopsie doopsie, but now's your chance. And so they really hammer that. Like, when are people vulnerable? When are they sad? Has a spouse died? They talk about specifically finding people who have had a child who died. And as insidious as that is, if you tell those people, hey, you're really sad because your child died, do you want to see them again? If you're Mormon, you can. And they frame it as a, like, the Mormon religion has found the way that you can be with your child again. And so, of course, parents are going to think, well, oh no, do I need to do something? Have I messed up? And so they really hit these, it's cruel. It's absolutely vile, but it's effective. It's absolutely effective.
Really. And I'm sure you, Dr. Time Waster, can even, I mean, since we come from a religion that does a similar thing, you have a hope to live forever on a paradise earth and see your family again.
Yes. I've never been to a single Jehovah's Witness memorial, because they don't call them funerals really even.
You're right.
And there's different cultural things. Like, for most of my life, they didn't even have like the body present or, things like that. I think that's just cultural, but it's always been you hands down, bring your Bible, because we're going to have to open to scripture, whatever that's, supposed to comfort everybody books. And really kind of open your heart up. And my father passed away of cancer when I was 23, and I had been newly disfellowshipped from the organization. He would not talk to me. I worked as a pharmacy technician in a hospital, a very small hospital in a small town where he died. So it was really emotional for me. And so I wasn't even sure I wanted to go to the memorial, and I did, against my better judgment. And it was nothing but people trying to take advantage of me emotionally to tell me to go back to the religion. That's all it was the whole time. Right. And it was really incredibly disheartening. It certainly did not want me to go back, because nobody was clearly respecting my feelings, or nobody asked me how I was doing, or, it wasn't about me. It was just about to get me to emotionally feel vulnerable and agree with them. And so thinking about that, and then sort of fast forwarding to who I am today and what I do in my job, I work in hospice, and I work for a nonprofit hospital organization that's not affiliated with any religion. And all hospices, regardless of who you're affiliated with, and I'm thinking more like to religious hospital institutions, but all of them are legally required by regulations on the federal level that they are not allowed to proselytize to patients at end of life or their families. These are vulnerable populations, and you are not allowed to do that. We do provide chaplain services that reaches out for spiritual needs, but if you have your own preference, of course, you can do that. If you want to have your Jehovah's Witness elder by your side as you die, that's totally, obviously, your right. But we're not allowed to proselytize of any particular religion. We're not allowed to take donations. And that's just that other dividing line that I feel like I've noticed between that slippery slope of, you could say, well, if Jehovah's Witness organization is a cult, then why couldn't the healthcare industry be a cult, the way that they've hierarched their situation? Jehovah's Witnesses have mirrored their entire religion to look like a corporation in every way possible. So it really blurs the lines a lot. But I think where the rubber meets the road is, who's holding them accountable to make sure that they're not taking advantage of vulnerable people? And where I work, there's a very clear dividing line, and we talk about it. We're open. We make sure that we're not doing anything to interfere with people's beliefs. And that's not what I see in this side. On this side, it's nothing but we better control people. We better make sure that they feel the same way we do. And it's very upsetting.
Also, follow the money. Follow the money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cases, and it's disturbing.
Yeah, there's a lot of money at play, and not knowing where it's going when it's supposed to be going back into the community. And I don't know, like, I'm not sure about other religions, but specifically know with Jehovah's Witnesses that they receive grants from the government, and knowing that they don't show anywhere what they do to benefit the community, but they're still allowed to receive this money is super frustrating, because we know they're using this money for lobbying.
Yes. Oh, there was just a huge scandal that the Mormon Church was hiding $32 billion in different funds, and
is that the SEC?
And so they just got, a hand slap, $5 million, like literally nothing. But that they specifically said they made different investment groups. They had different groups in charge of them and didn't like let other people know they had these other groups, because they didn't want the membership to know how much money they had, because it's very much portrayed to membership as you're paying your tithing, you're paying your fast offerings. Those go back to the impoverished in your ward, your church congregation, in your congregation, in the community, in the world. We're feeding the homeless. We're doing all of that. And then finding out it's going into investment groups that the highest leadership in the church, there's like little bits of information that have come out, but that they get hundreds of thousands of dollars. They have private jets that they use. They have credit cards that they can spend unlimited amounts of money with, that we're buying their houses. We're buying houses for their kids. So as this is starting to come out, it is very frustrating when there is an expectation. Mormonism is pay to play. You have to pay this certain amount of money to go to the temple to be with your family. And it's portrayed as that money then goes to the poor. And when it's going to a $32 billion, investment account, that is very frustrating.
Tax free.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Lindsay, have you heard of Luna Corbden? She's an author, and she wrote "Lifting the Veil" on Mormon secrecy or something like that. Luna Corbden.
Yes, I have heard. I haven't read the book, but I have heard of her. Yes.
She spoke at the conference on religious trauma last year, and then I just released a podcast interview with her on the conference on religious trauma. Super interesting, talking about those different things related to Mormonism. I'm so glad you're here today to be talking about this.
Thank you. No, I'll have to check those out. Those sound fantastic. So
I'm telling you, you got to check out her content on TikTok. It's on point. It is just. No, really, like I love a smart woman who can just give it to me straight. I need that. You mentioned something. I feel like all religions are like transactionary. I don't know if you all feel the same, but I kind of feel like you've got to give to get. Like there's nothing, and then you don't even get anything.
No,
you just get sin.
It's coming in the afterlife.
Exactly. That mansion in heaven.
Oh yeah.
It's all about what you're doing, and it's never enough. Like you have to continuously be donating, volunteering your time, spending it out in the ministry, whatever it is. It's a constant spinning of wheels, and it makes me feel like they just keep you busy so that way you don't have enough time to really understand what they're doing to you.
Absolutely.
You're like on that gerbil on a wheel, just keep spinning.
Yeah, if you're not
keep swimming.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Stacey. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're not giving your money, they're wanting you to serve. I know, like even in the Pentecostal church, they're always talking about ways you can serve. Get on this team, get on that team, and they want your time, and you get burnt out. And that way, you're always in the church, and your whole life is surrounded. So they'll find ways. Exactly. And
Yes.
so you feel like, oh, I have all these gifts, so I need to give. And if that this is a way you can give to God, and you can give to the local church, and you can give to the person beside you. And so they'll find ways for you to give your time, your money, your talents.
Yes. And to keep you busy constantly, so you never have time to stop and think about whether what you believe actually makes sense or not, because you have to go to prayer group and choir and this and that and do missions work and all these other things that you just burned out. You don't have time to even think.
And I think that also serves a really important purpose for them. I mean, at least, my background is only Mormonism, so I don't want to be speaking for other religions.
No, go for it.
But with all of those expectations, you are a human. So you can't do all of it all of the time. And so you always mess up every day. And then that guilt of like, I could have done more. I needed to do more. I didn't say my prayers in the morning. So, or maybe I forgot to repent about this thing at night, or I only read my scriptures for 5 minutes, or we didn't do family home evening this week, or, there's always something where you failed and you should have done better. And so you need them. Because you messed up. And so next week you have to do better. This week you have to do better. And you're a person. You just can only do what you can do. And like stepping away, that's when I realized like, oh, if I just have to cancel, it's okay. I'm not a bad person. If I'm like,
no is okay.
Mentally, I can't do this today. But I was raised like, no, you just go, you go, you go, you go. And if you burn out and you can't do something, then that is a failure. You should have relied on God more. You should have had more faith. And so that was huge, like stepping away and being like, oh no, I get to prioritize my time. I can say no, because I was raised, you don't say no. You can't say no to the church. And so like finding the ability to draw boundaries was huge, because that wasn't something that you're allowed to do.
Boundaries are so huge, right? It's not something you have in a high control religion. Everybody has access to you at all times. They're judging you at all times. It's like a self-reporting system where like, oh, RIon slipped. We got to go tell on RIon because we got to keep that wheel spinning.
Yeah. And you don't, go ahead.
No,
and you don't get boundaries with anyone. Like you can't have boundaries with your parents. So like you don't get privacy. You don't get to draw boundaries with what you think is okay with that relationship, even as an adult. Like there's this idea that your father is still the head of the clan. And so he's the priesthood leader. He has a certain amount of say in what you do, or at least the ability to say like, I disagree with you. You should do this. So you don't get boundaries with your parents. You don't get boundaries with your church leaders. You don't get boundaries with anyone that you are serving with. You don't get boundaries with leaving Mormonism, I had to learn how to make boundaries because I'd never done it. And that's really hard to learn how to do as an adult.
Yes. And codependency is baked right into to religions for that exact reason that you're talking about. No boundaries.
Yeah.
When I was 19, I read a book about codependency. I really had no idea. I was just looking for a self-help book. I was literally losing my mind. I was disfellowshipped, still living with my parents, had no friends. And I read that book, and I remember reading a line out loud in the car to my parents, and they got angry with me for pointing something out, like from the book.
Oh, wow.
And I remember putting that book away, and I never picked it back up because... And now looking back, I get it. It was always that way. It was always me banging my head. If I tried to bring something or ask a question, it was just like the gaslighting. Well, no, it's not like that. Don't you want to love Jehovah? Don't you want to do what's right for Jehovah? Don't you want to live forever? And here's me going, well, yeah, of course I want all those things. But you don't really know what thank you, Dan. You don't necessarily know what you're signing up for because you've just grown up in it and trying to fight your way out of it. If you don't have people who can be like a foundation for you to even ask those questions or to have that kind of conversation to wake you up, because somebody had mentioned you're just in that echo chamber. So there's no one.
And you know what else is interesting is that people who leave high demand religions share the same laundry list as adult children of alcoholics. It's the same list because codependency again is baked right in there. So adult children of alcoholics, ACOA, there's a lot of crossover with what I call acorns, adult children of religious nuts. So these are things that we
I
should
need to
be
hear more
aware
about
of.
that. I'm
I
like a
know,
double
yeah.
nut then. I'm like double nut.
I need a class about that. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
And
yes.
the book you might have been talking about, RIon, was Codependent No More. It's
That's
a
the
very
one.
popular, very helpful book for a lot of people who do leave religions and cults.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it worked really well. I put it right back on the shelf when I got when I got gaslit.
I was going to say, when we started going to our Calvinist church, because I was raised Pentecostal and I became Calvinist the last 2 years of my Christian life. That church had 2 services every Sunday, and it was an expectation that you attended both services. And I remember very early on, within probably 2 months, I was feeling, we weren't even technically members at this church yet, but I felt that pressure right away of being there. And I remember one Sunday waking up with a really bad migraine, because I get migraines. And I had missed the Sunday before because we had been visiting my mom who lived out of town. And the next Sunday I woke up with a migraine, and I was panicking because I thought, oh, great, we haven't been at church last week because we were out of town. Now I woke up with a migraine, and oh my God, what are they going to be thinking? And so I was frantically messaging a friend that I could tell, like, please tell everyone I have a migraine. And I was just feeling this like, oh, what are they going to be thinking? And are they going to be
guilt?
I felt that. And I was like, I've never felt this at like the Pentecostal church it was a mega church. So no one knew if we were there or not. There was like 2,500 people, right? But this was a tiny little church of like 70 people, and it would have been obvious. And so like the next week we went, people were like, oh, we haven't seen you in a few weeks. And I was like, I know, I had a migraine. And I was just feeling so anxious about it. And I didn't like that. And then we didn't always go to every service, because my husband was like, I am not going to every single service, 2 Sundays, like on Sundays, 2 services. And there was one service that it's a lot. That the pastor, he preached a sermon about attending both services. He preached it in the morning. And I was getting really angry, because I was looking at my husband and I'm like, I feel like he's preaching this to us specifically. And we got up and I was like, we're not coming back later, because I'm like, I'm not going to be manipulated. And we didn't go back later.
That's awesome.
Thank you. But it was just, I look back and I was like, I couldn't believe how early on at that church I felt so guilt ridden for not being there for 2 weeks in a row. And then, but it just goes to show, it's almost like I could see the writing on the wall of where this was heading, and I wasn't wrong. But yeah, that codependency and the shame that is placed on you is just,
and like that doesn't add to the already guilt, or not guilt, but the pain that you're feeling. Like you're already feeling in pain. So stress is what I meant to say, adds on to that. So it's not going to make you feel any better worried about what other people are thinking about what Stacey's doing.
And then of course they bring it up the next week. Oh, we haven't seen you. And I was like, I know, I get migraines. And
really? Even though we see people emptying the pews at this point, leaving a lot of religions and religious groups, we also see the opposite right now. We see a lot of people running either to cults or high demand groups, or becoming members of MAGA, right, in the United States, because in uncertain times and times of a lot of change and turmoil and transition, people, particularly if they were raised religious, they just want to believe that someone will protect them and take care of them. They're looking for a strong man, because that is much easier than having to thoughtfully go through how, as a society, what changes we need to implement, rather than magical thinking. If magical thinking is your go-to, you're going to find it in all sorts of places.
It's easy when somebody can tell you just what to believe, how to think, how to feel, how to handle situations. Right? Like I can solve each one of that. Open the Bible, solve. Kneel down and pray, solve. Go out and
ever
field service.
Still have that inclination to still pray? Like when something happens, do you still kind of have that like, oh, please, like, do you go to pray still? Because I sometimes still.
I talk to the universe, and I find that, because here's the thing. I've always just talked to myself, like I just do. So for me, it feels a bit more comforting just to put it out into space. I don't really talk to, I don't know what the hell I'm talking to, probably myself.
Yeah.
But I do that, and that is self-soothing for me.
When I went back to nursing school after I had left Mormonism, previously, like raised Mormon, like you pray before you take a test. Any test, didn't matter if it's a spelling test in second grade or whatever, you pray. And so like that had, the first time I went to college, you always pray in the testing center. And so like that was just such a habit that when I wasn't believing at all, but when I went back to school, I would just like take a second to be quiet, because it was like such a habit that it took me. I was like, I feel more comfortable taking a test if I just have this. So I just like kind of close my eyes, just like think about the information. But I was like, wow, that was really, really deep in like my psyche, that even when I didn't believe at all, I still like needed to go through that motion before I took a test to feel comfortable taking the test.
Right. I think that's what it is. It's still deep in my psyche. I don't believe in anything, but I still go to like, oh, please. Oh, I'm not talking to anyone, but I just, yeah.
I think that's probably maybe how it all started out. Just people probably talking out loud, going, "Who are you talking to?" Oh, yeah, I'm not talking to myself. Like, there's somebody out there listening. I'm not crazy. Somebody's listening.
And certainly too for the idea of helping other people when they are in distress. We were taught in our religious groups that you pray for someone, thoughts and prayers. And now I'm recognized, nope, that does absolutely no good. Better come up with something practical. Here's a casserole. Do you need me to do the laundry? What can I do for you? But it takes a while to shift out of the one mindset into another. And further to what RIon was saying, humans crave certainty, security, and order, as well as acceptance.
Yes.
And religions and conspiracy theories, they wrap those up with a bow. They promise these simple solutions to complex problems. And that's why the groups continue to proliferate.
And I even, to like what RIon said, like I'm a NICU nurse. And so sometimes that gets really hectic really quickly. And there will be moments where I feel completely out of control. Like the situation is changing very quickly and I'm not sure what direction it will go. And I've had moments where I'm just like, oh, please. Like I don't believe in any God, but there is just something in your being when you feel out of control that you're just like, please, anybody, like anybody, like I need something. So I'm going to reach in all directions. And it's not even necessarily prayer, but I've recognized that like that in that quick moment of desperation, there's not a God. I don't expect anyone to answer, but there is just this moment of panic where it's like, if a doctor hears me, that's great. That'd be better. Like I hit a code. So let's do that. But just really anybody. Anyone can answer. Anybody. I'll take anything at this point. So I've recognized that too. And at first it used to make me really like embarrassed that I was like, oh, am I just like kind of a weak atheist that I still, like that no atheist in foxholes. I'm like, that's not me, I swear. But I realize it's just, I think in our very core being, in a moment of complete desperation, you're just reaching for anything. And that's I think that's very, very human.
I just say I'm getting in touch with my higher self. I'm like, hey, higher RIon, you better kick in here, girl. You better remember that. Become God.
That really silly movie, and the guy was a race car driver, and his car crashes, and he jumps out and he's yelling, "Help me, Oprah! Help me, Elvis!" Like Elvis just listing off all these names.
It's like Talladega Nights.
I think it was Talladega. Yes, that's the one. Oh my gosh, that's so good. We are getting close to our hour mark. I just want to let the audience know, if you have, doesn't mean we have to end, but I just want the audience to know that if they have any questions, you can direct them to Wes, I'm guessing, at Skeptic Haven if you'd like, if you have any out there. I did see somebody mention something that I'd love to ask what the panel thinks about this. So Jehovah's Witnesses have a little brag that they go to prisons to proselytize. How do you all feel about knowing that they go to parts of the prison that nobody else would go to? And these people do eventually get out of jail and come into the fold of Kingdom Halls, and no one would be the wiser.
Oh wow.
What they were. How do you feel about that?
Well, I know Christians do the same thing. Like they go and there's prison ministries.
Well, the JWs brag that they go to where nobody else goes. So they're going to whether it's true or not, but that's
are they like committing crimes to get put into prison so they can proselytize?
Okay. Yeah.
I do not recommend.
Janice went there.
We do not recommend. No.
Bomb drop. No, do not recommend. But I think that just kind of is one of those things where it lets me know how bad proselytization is, because we're in effect erasing. This is how I feel. I feel like we're erasing culture by going into foreign lands to make foreign lands.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's land grabs, money, right? And obviously people who maybe don't have good internet connection, like have access to education, like at least here, I think maybe religion is slowly on the downturn because we have information at the tips of our hands, but other countries don't necessarily have that.
Yeah. A different but similar type brag that Mormons will make is that church is the same everywhere. So it doesn't matter what country you're in, what city you're in, that the meeting will be identical as the meeting in Salt Lake City. And so
Jehovah's Witnesses say the same thing too, by the way.
Yes, yeah. And they use it,
and they're the one true religion, just so you know.
Exactly. I know.
Yeah, we're better.
I think there are more Mormon, probably not anymore, but we have more really elaborate temples that really serve no purpose.
I think you have congregants who are, how do I put this better, more educated, maybe I should say it that way, have more education and have better paying jobs and probably earn more than your average JW. We're one of the poorer.
Oh, see, yeah, no, Mormons love a good prosperity gospel. They love that. That's how you.
I love it.
If somebody's rich, they're righteous. Like that's how you can tell. Mitt Romney, hella righteous. Jesus loves that guy. But like you know, but so this idea that church is all the same. So it doesn't matter what continent you're on, what country you're in. They demand that all worship looks like the white bread ceremony from Salt Lake City. And so there is this idea that worship for all people in all cultures has to look one very specific way. And there were talks and lessons in general conference where like the leadership talks to all the church twice a year, where they'd say like, hey, we've noticed you're starting to let some of your old traditions creep into your worship. And like, Jesus is not happy with that. And they call it the wicked traditions of their fathers. And so there's this very negative connotation put on any kind of worship that differs from this very specific type of worship that they encourage. And it erases cultures. It erases how people express themselves. It erases how all these other people have been worshiping or expressing joy or expressing love or fellowship. Right. And that is the expectation. So they come into an area, they say, hey, we're going to build this temple so you can be with your family forever, but you have to pay. And you have to, even if it means you go without food, they preach that all the time. If you're going hungry, Jesus is happier about it. And that you have to worship this very specific way. And if you aren't, it's because you come from people who were wicked. And so just denigrating these other cultures, it's horrifying once you step away and you're like, oh, like they preach it in a way that they're like, see, we're all the same. But they erase everything about other cultures, other groups, other countries to get that way. And then they preach it like it's something wonderful.
I'm glad to see some First Nations reserves. Some First Nations reserves are rejecting missionaries and not allowing any missionaries or proselytizing.
Yes, they all should.
Yes,
exactly. They all should.
Every time I see that,
go to each.
I love it.
Yeah, I would love to go to each one and just encourage them to just completely shut down any kind of missionary work, because I don't know if you're familiar with the Mormon podcast, I think is what they go by on TikTok. But I remember there was somebody sharing their story where specifically they were doing missionary work, and the people they were talking to didn't have like money for like food that week or whatnot, but they were still like pushing that they needed to tithe or whatever they call donate to the church. And I probably wasn't very nice in the never mind. Erase.
You were direct.
I was direct.
Plausible deniability.
I was thankful that they have not done that, but I just, wanted to get my point across about how deplorable that is. Sorry.
Someone in the comments just said, cook and eat the missionary. They would taste bitter.
All that shame and guilt. All that
I was going to say, no.
To you.
Mormons love their sugar though. So I don't know. Maybe it'd be like
no caffeine.
Yeah. Well, some caffeine. It's really that's a gray area. It's a gray area because some caffeine, yes, it depends on who the prophet is. So.
Of course it does.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But you can have blood transfusions, right?
Yes, we can. We can have blood transfusions. When I tell you,
thank goodness,
the fear. We just had this recently, but somebody's like, hey, we've got a mom delivering and they're like listing things. And I'm like, oh no, like all these things that are so bad. And then they're like, and they're Jehovah's Witness. And I was like, no, no,
really?
No. Cause I'm like, the fear in my heart every time we have a Jehovah's Witness family, like I am terrified because we do blood transfusions all the time in the NICU. That's a really routine thing we have to do. And so when we're going to get a baby who's a Jehovah's Witness baby, I'm so scared.
You're racing for it.
I am. I'm like, oh no. Like, it's just, I'm terrified.
And it's traumatizing to healthcare workers to know that we have a way to save this life. And we literally have to stand here.
Can you not step in for, sorry to interrupt, can you not step in for someone under the age of 18 for blood transfusion? Like, can you not?
Some states, I think, have tried to fight that. And you can, in some cases, I think, in some states get like a court order. But it's really hard to do, I think.
An emergency.
That's the issue. I think it just really depends. And, nobody really wants to talk about that. Just like nobody wants to talk about the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses do proselytize to pedophiles in jail. In fact, all of their pedophiles that are Jehovah's Witnesses that are now in jail continue to believe that they are still part of the one true religion and will continue to preach Jehovah's Witnesses and how the salvation and the redemption must be so tempting. And to have this place that opens their arms, of course, they're going to start naturally collecting, whether they're doing it on purpose or maliciously. You're going to start collecting a group of people that are saying, hey, I could come here. I've got my redemption. And I'm in a community that has no idea what I've done or doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So now we're perpetuating that cycle. And then on top of it, no blood transfusions. I mean, there's just, we can keep going on a lot of problematic things, but it's a lot of control. I don't.
In Idaho, just so it's extra spicy, in Idaho, it is legal to deny your child life-saving medical care, even if you know it means they will die. So
what?
we have, yeah. I live in hell. So
no kidding.
Yeah. So we have kids that die every year because you just have to claim religious belief and you are completely covered. You don't have to, like, we have kids die of strep because their parents can refuse antibiotics, even if we know they're going to die. And so like, it's not a problem for Jehovah's Witnesses because even if we're like, please let us transfuse your baby. Please, dear God, let us transfuse your baby. They need it. If there's no problem. They can absolutely deny it. They can deny anything. And so even if it's so bad.
So abortion bad, amoxicillin bad.
Yes.
Equal same results. So I don't understand the logic.
Yes, so we can force a child to carry a pregnancy to term. You can also marry a child, but you can also deny your child any life-saving medical care, and it's perfectly legal. There will be no investigation.
Okay, that is a perfect segue. I want to let people know at the Conference on Religious Trauma happening in October, one of the panel discussions will be on child marriage in religious communities, because that shit goes on. It's hard to believe, but it goes on in a lot of states.
It's not. Honestly, it's not even hard to believe for me anymore. And especially considering I believe in some states there's trying to lower the age requirements for marriage, aren't they?
In Idaho, they're trying to get rid of marriage licenses so that you can just get a certificate because it's not legal.
Stop it.
No, it's so, you guys, it's so bad. It's so then there wouldn't necessarily be a legal age requirement because it's a certificate. It's not a legal document. And so it does not need to be certified by a legal body. Yeah, it's like it's
so that legalizes gay marriage then. Got it.
Yes.
How would divorce work then?
I'm just trying to make it hard.
Well, they're also trying to get rid of no-fault divorces. So I told you I live in hell. It's like really bad.
But it's not a divorce if you're not married.
Yeah, but if it's just a certificate, then like how can you prove a marriage actually happened? It just makes everything significantly more difficult and potentially more problematic for the child bride who now there's not a lot of legal oversight. Anyway, we're doing so badly here.
Whoever's in charge of Idaho, maybe try turning it off and on again.
I know.
Needs a fucking reset.
No, Idaho needs a reboot.
We do. We're kind of. It's not good. We're a failed state. We just need to start over.
Mom,
I was wrong.
I think there's a hell, Mom. I think
it's in Idaho.
Hell.
It is
Idaho.
It's Idaho. It's hell on earth. So it's
great. It's not that far from me, so
I know. Yeah, bad news. Bad news. You live just directly above.
Right above. Okay.
Wow. Well, I live in a state that's I live in Washington State, which is right next door to yours, and there's some bills that we're trying to push through that will make clergy defined a little bit better, so that it includes like elders of the Jehovah's Witness organization, and makes them mandatory reporters for child crimes, essentially. And
very good.
I was mortified the moment I realized that was not something that was already in place. So
no, and they have their 2-person rule, so it never.
They have
works
their
anyway.
2-person rule,
right?
There's also the a lot of states also still have the clergy penitence privilege, so they can still have kind of a loophole to not report crimes, but I think these are things we should all probably be looking at deeply in our own states if we actually care about what happens to children.
Go to RIon. If you go to RIonn.org, I believe, you can choose a couple different states and the like regulations or what have you that you'd like to compare. And one of them being like the clergy penitent privilege, statute of limitations, because these are all things that are going to come into play. Like if we had the statute of limitations, like people have an ability after they turn 18 to have a time period where they can digest and realize what's happened to them and come forward with whatever had happened to them as a child, that would give them, some time to process, because a lot of times you don't know what's happened to you until you get older. So that stops people from being able to pursue, which leaves these people, the perpetrators, still out there continuously, and then inside the church system, if you confess to an elder that you've harmed a child, they don't have to, like in Pennsylvania specifically, they don't have to report it because of that loophole, as long as it was confessed to them. So we have the mandatory reporter, they have to report it, but not if it's confessed. So what the hell, right? So looking at, we got to start contacting our officials and making sure that we tell them we need better protections for children who are realizing something's happened. We need to give them more time to process, and we need these preachers, elders, the men who are supposed to be protecting their flock, to do the work and protect their flock by coming forward and reporting it to the authorities, not just writing it down into books and putting it into like files and then sending it off to corporate and having it stored somewhere, which is what happens in the Jehovah's Witness organization. Sorry,
Yeah.
that was a bit of a rant.
And in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and in Mormonism. Yep, there was
in the Southern Baptist,
Arizona, where
SBC.
There was a hotline. Wasn't there a hotline?
Yeah, there's a hotline,
Yeah.
but it's the church's lawyers. So they like, if it happened on church property, or the whole point of it is to see if the church can in any way be culpable. It's not for victims. It's not to protect victims. So a lot of times they would say, like, technically in your state, you don't have to say anything. So they wouldn't. And that's what's come out, is the whole point was it was to cover the Mormon church's ass so that they didn't have to report. So they wouldn't.
Wow. That's horrifying.
Yeah.
It is.
It would also be nice if they had any kind of like official training on what to look for too, because in healthcare, I'm a mandatory reporter.
Yes.
My title is absolutely carved out in the law that says I am a mandatory reporter. And nobody wants to make false accusations or, misjudge a situation to where you think somebody might be in a place of harm and then they get taken out of their family and their home for no good reason. Obviously nobody wants to make that inadvertent action, but we also need to kind of, as a society, look out for everybody if we want to have a society where we feel good. And Jehovah's Witnesses and many others have a bit of a false sense of security within their organization because they think everybody wouldn't be there if they didn't have good intentions.
Yes.
And really, we're all just people. And if you, it's like, what's that saying? If a locked door keeps an honest man honest, it's just giving not only like guidance on how to handle a situation, but also education on ways that it might look like and ways that it could present so that you feel good about doing something good. I don't think anybody wants to be in a situation where they don't know what to do. And then your only option is to pray about it, right? Because we want action, right? We want to feel good that we're doing something meaningful. And, getting a child out of a very dangerous and horrific situation would make me feel really good. It would make me feel terrible still about the situation, but I didn't cause it. And if I'm taught how to look at the situation, if I'm taught how to spot red flags and things to at least, say, hey, could somebody check on this? I think that would probably open the door for a lot of these organizations to just shift gears, right? If Jehovah's Witnesses just said, all right, two witness rules been a problem. Maybe we should revisit this. Yes. I would be like so grateful.
Yeah.
But I'm pushing hard because they're pushing equally back and saying, no, we're doubling down. We are directed by God. Shut your face. Oh. And it just makes me mad, and I just want to push back. So
that's the problem whenever we apply the willing suspension of disbelief. So in other words, if we believe that someone can be a prophet, someone can hear directly from God, when we start to embrace that, then we are open to all manner of charlatans and nonsense, because you're saying, well, the logical world is suspended because miracles, because God can make anything happen. If God can talk to anyone, he can talk through this crazy person or whatever, talk through a donkey, as the Bible says. There are a lot of talking donkeys in Washington. We know that already. But we need to be, we need to stay vigilant and not just let ourselves get carried away believing things that sound nice or feel nice.
Well, and along with what Dr. Time Waster said, like, I think part of the issue to this might be controversial, but when leadership is primarily men, and almost exclusively in Mormonism, it is just men.
Always.
And so I will preface it, not all abuse is perpetuated by men. Women can be abusers, but a large percent of it is perpetuated by men. And so when these men go to other men and say, hey, I'm really sorry, or the wife comes and has a problem, but the husband's like, I'm really sorry, or it's a misunderstanding, or my wife's the worst, or, it is always filtered through that male lens. And the only leadership is men. So there's never a woman being like, hold up. Like, let's for 2 seconds think about what is the wife saying? What is the female partner saying? And that never happens. There's never a catch on that. And so you have men talking to other men and confessing and saying things like, well, I got things that I think other men could relate to. I'm sure they frame it, most abusers don't frame it like, yeah, I'm the worst, I'm an abuser. They frame it in a way where it's like, I didn't want to do it, like we were fighting, or whatever.
I had a long day. She pushed my buttons.
Exactly. And she's just very, she doesn't listen. She doesn't submit to my authority. All these.
I get that, brother. I understand how that is, brother.
Yeah. That there's all kinds of these then religious things, because in Mormonism you covenant to obey your husband. So there's a whole line of, was she obeying you? Was she not? And and so I think adding just like having that aspect of just male leadership, that I think they can see themselves in these situations, not saying that they're all abusers, but they see themselves in the situation that the man is in more than the wife is in. And so then when the man's like, I'm really sorry, I'm truly sorry, I prayed about it, I'm going to do better. We've seen time and time again within Mormonism that doesn't get reported up. That doesn't get pushed to authorities. That doesn't go to anywhere where there could be actually consequences, that those men say, hey, he was really sorry. He told me he was sorry. We prayed. We felt way better about it. He's going to do better. And so these situations get perpetuated again and again and again.
Yep. There's no change.
Predators rise to the top. Male predators especially rise to the top in religious situations and in cults. They just do.
Right. And there's no representation. So how are we supposed to, how is somebody else who's not a man supposed to step in and make any kind of changes when it's just going to be the continuous like passing off to the next crook who just wants power? And that's not to say that they're all bad. I definitely don't think that. But do I feel that like the narcissist personality goes towards those positions of authority? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. They will, right? They're gonna they love power. They love the fact that they're in a position where they're the go-to guy. That's gonna just give them a big
the members
old boost.
The members are sworn to secrecy because they're not supposed to this is where I don't like the word forgiveness. I think forgiveness has been weaponized by abusers because a predator can do the bad thing over and over again and demand, well, in the Bible, it says you have to forgive me, so you must forgive me. So I'd like us to move away even from the idea of forgiveness and instead talk more in terms of acceptance. But yeah, predators, forgiveness, all those things are just kind of woven right into Abrahamic religions anyway.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Abrahamic religions. Absolutely. They are very pervasive. I said that at the start of the show, they're pervasive in this country. And even though they are getting smaller, I think that the uptick, and I don't know if it's wrong to say that, but part of me feels like it's that biblical thing where as Babylon the Great starts to fall and, she's trying to catch on to everything that she can as she dies out, pulling everybody down into the pits of hell. I almost feel like that's what is happening with religion. I hope it's like this last gurgling breath, trying to grasp for air and let me get and sink my claws into every.
Right. Because they feel they're losing power. Yes, that's exactly right.
Right.
So there's a desperation there.
Yeah, unfortunately. So I think it's a matter of keeping these discussions open. And I feel like I've taken a few key points from this, and I might even watch it back and write. I was like writing furiously, like in notes, like as you guys were saying stuff, because it's just little, like just one little thing. For instance, Dr. Time Waster, you said something about like size of the congregation, and it all of a sudden hit me like they always keep the congregation small at the Kingdom Hall. Like we're talking about 75 to like maybe 110 people. And I think that is because they want to make sure that we can keep that self-reporting system, because apostasy, you said, you went to this one church where they would never know, right? But the key thing with Jehovah's Witnesses is to make sure we can watch each other.
We spy on each other.
Yes, so if there's only a few people there, it's way easier to keep on top of people and make sure that they're on the up and up. And
we stopped attending. At every big church we stopped going to, we never heard from them again, which was fine. I mean, looking back, it was fine.
Right. It's
but
good.
the small ones, they're on you like white on rice.
Yeah. So but just those little tidbits really help me process. And I'm hoping that we helped even our panel here, but people in the audience process some of the trauma and issues that we have going on our society right now with the Babylon the Great roaring its ugly head. I'm sorry, but you got to take that opportunity.
We just have one last question, I think, just to wrap up in the start. It just is to wrap up, how do we spot a cult? Is it anything calling itself a church, an MLM, anything else?
MLMs don't call themselves MLMs. Cults don't call themselves cults. So that would be my first recommendation right there. Nobody's going to call it out right off the bat. So it'll be sneakier.
And bite model.
Yes, I'd say bite model. And I would also say if they have to tell you, be careful who you talk to about this organization. Who are you talking to? Like, don't go online. If you're talking to a group and like, don't go online. And like, people online are just haters. And, you know, like something in Mormonism, they're like, if you were going to buy a Toyota, you wouldn't go talk to a Ford dealership. And so just this idea that like, don't go, like if they're cautioning you about what you're going to find online, that's concerning. Target doesn't tell me to not talk to Walmart before I go to Target. And so it's, if they're saying that, that's an instant red flag to me. Or if they're saying like, oh, we're not a cult, like again,
if there's us
like
against them,
like, yeah, I was going to say, if they have to tell you they're not problematic, they're probably pretty problematic.
Yes. Yep. If they're trying to control your behavior, your information, like you were just saying, Lindsay, your thoughts and your emotions, if there's an authoritarian sense about it, if the beliefs are extreme, if they're trying to isolate you from society, and if there's especially, you know, if there's a veneration of a certain individual, that's a huge red flag. But those are just some ideas to keep in mind if you are exploring other groups or interested in getting into another group.
And
you should be able to ask questions.
Yes. And I think also how they talk about people who are no longer associated with the group. Like, what do they say? Do they say, oh yeah, no, we had a great time with Stacy. Like she was great. It just wasn't like a great fit, and that's fine.
Apostate.
Like, if they're like apostate or like Mormonism, they call you covenant breakers. And like, so if the language they use for people who leave, like, can you leave with your dignity intact? If you can't leave with your dignity intact, it's a cult.
Yeah.
Damn. Whew. This is fire.
On that note.
Really, y'all, this has been so eye-opening and informing for me because I spent so much time in that echo chamber. I don't always get this. Yeah, I get to like download and watch videos, but the dialogue is really what kind of helps me process. This has been so awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you guys wanted to add before we go? I want to make sure if you have any.
I want to add one more thing,
please,
just about identifying cults. I was doing some research on it, and there's a lot of really good TED Talks and things out there that just kind of break it down and give you a lot to think about. But I think the number one thing that I found doing this research that surprised me, probably shouldn't have, was that the number one way that people will target you from a cult or to recruit you into the cult is from coworkers, friends, and family members. So people you already know who've already gotten into this, and they might have a way of, like, they know something about it and they think it's great and they want to get you into it. And whether their intent is good or not, but that's how every MLM I've ever been introduced was done, you know, hey, this great thing. And so since all of them tend to promise answers to things that you desperately want, your family members are going to know when you're the most emotionally vulnerable, not necessarily on purpose, not necessarily maliciously. They love you and they see you hurting and, hey, I discovered this great thing that has an answer. You should do this with me. And not to say that that's always a red flag for a cult, but since that is probably one of the largest ways that people do get recruited, it should always be something that maybe you pause and think about and just think it's not necessarily this person. It, you know, I've had people say, well, because you told me I should look at it, I just assumed it was, above board and good. But that's trusting that, just like in all the world of misinformation we have, it's trusting that maybe I did my research, maybe I clickbaited a little,
Yeah.
So it's not personal, but that could be your first barrier. Is this misinformation? What is this? How do you get into it? How can I get out of it if I don't want to do it? And, just kind of approaching things in that manner too. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
Right. Very good points, though. Those are very
And beware the love bombing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And the
I was
hidden
just going to
fees.
say the love bombing.
The hidden fees.
It's the small writing that you don't realize, right? It's that small print that you've got to, but I think the love bombing is kind of key. As soon as you go in, if you're just hit left and right and everybody wants to be your friend, like I'm pretty cool, but I don't think everybody wants to be my friend. Like something's up with that. Something's up with that. Something sneaky, sis. And also, I think, like, how long have they been in it? Like, is their enthusiasm coming because they just learned something, but they truly, haven't done their research? Or are they a long hauler and their life hasn't gotten any better? Like, is that an indication of anything?
Yes. And if they're pressuring you to cut off contact with non-believers, with family members who just don't get it. And we see this in MLMs, multi-level marketing, as well as in all sorts of other types of cults. And they want to keep you all to themselves. That's another important one.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed this so much, you guys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this has been amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Can I ask one last thing?
Yeah.
Please.
Please consider taking a look at the Conference on Religious Trauma YouTube channel, because there is so much information on there for people who have left high demand groups, religions, and cults. Conference on Religious Trauma YouTube channel is a good place to get some helpful information.
Yes.
Perfect,
and also, please make sure you subscribe to your YouTube channel is called, you said Conference of...
That's it, right? Yeah.
Conference on Religious Trauma.
Conference on Religious Trauma. And is your website Divorcing Religion? Is that also?
It is divorcing-religion.com. And my podcast is called Divorcing Religion.
So make sure you check out all of Janice's stuff. Like I said, I'm going to make sure I binge. I'm going to do some binging. I'm going to be a better person by tomorrow.
About the only thing I don't have is an OnlyFans page, but who knows?
Why not?
Just give it some time. 2023 is not over.
Right? We've got time left. And Lindsay, is there anywhere else that you'd like people to follow you? Do you have any other content? Anything you're doing?
Yeah. So I'm Socialistly Awkward on TikTok, Instagram, on Twitter. I'm also on the Dig on America podcast. So Left Angle every Friday night, 8 to 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So
make sure you guys follow. And Dr. Time Waster, please tell me where we can waste some more time with you.
Yes. Well, I'm all about wasting time. So of course, my main social media is on TikTok. So you can find me at Dr. Time Waster 2.0. Don't ask. And I did just start a new YouTube account, which I literally just started it. So I have no content on there really to speak of yet. So I'm going to work on building some things. I might start sharing some stories. So, we'll see what happens. I'll waste your time too, if you'd like. So
I love that. We would absolutely adore for you to waste our time. All right. With that, have I forgotten anything, Stacy? I mean, I know
we need to thank our patrons. Yes.
But we haven't forgotten anything else, right?
No.
Just want to make sure.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Thank you to our audience for being so chatty. That really helps push the channel, the algorithm, the panel. You all have been so fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you for staying the extra time that
this has been fun.
I know
this would be so much fun.
Yeah,
I was afraid I'd be crying by the end. But I'm just kidding. On that note, Apostacie, my doll, would you please take us on out of here?
Yeah, so thank you to everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to Skeptic Haven. We have shows throughout the week. And big thanks to our patrons, RIon, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Weisman, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, Sunny Shell, Aaron Colson, and Phil Calderon. Thank you everyone for being here. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that, spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas, think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past and the pettiness.